Thank you for joining us, everyone, as we introduce you to Arctic IT and our webinar about modernizing and securing your tribe with cloud managed services. I'm Andre Gonzalez, the account executive dedicated to the tribal space. And ever since I joined Arctic IT years ago, I've watched us continuously invest in the platforms and technology we employ to serve and secure our clients. My role has changed over the years, but one thing that's remained constant is that technology is a moving target, and our mission is to stay ahead of it and benefit the organizations that we serve. We've got a bright team of talented and highly trained individuals that add their expertise to what we offer our clients on a day-to-day basis. We're focused on bringing this methodology to further the interests and stability of Indian country at large. In manner of an agenda, in today's presentation, we'll introduce you to our organization and its offerings, give you a primer on the security challenges we're solving for, talk about what Microsoft has brought to the market and how we're leveraging that technology for the benefit of our clients. And we hope to be able to field some questions from the audience at the end. We'll allow you to send questions in through the meeting chat. I'm pleased that the visionary of this offering is here to help me present. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to our president and CEO, Dave Bailey, to start us off.
Well, thanks for the introduction, Andre, and welcome to everybody on the call. I see we have a good group of folks. I'm happy to see that. We want to talk about a partnership that works for you. So some of you may have heard of Arctic IT before. Maybe you haven't. The reason we're called Arctic IT is because we are from originally up in Anchorage, Alaska. Our headquarters is based up there in Anchorage. We are a wholly owned subsidiary of Doyon Limited, which is an Alaskan Native corporation. So not only do we have expertise for nearly 20 years in the tribal enterprise and tribal government space, but based on a good portion of that success and a lot of our business inside the government and public sector, Doyon acquired Arctic IT a number of years ago and has helped us to grow into a large national IT organization today. So we're happy to talk to you not only from a technology and security grounding, but also from an understanding of tribal enterprise, tribal government, and the mission and culture that surrounds the businesses that we support. So when we look at our business throughout the U.S., we've engaged with about 72 or so different tribal organizations in the past few years. When we look at the types of business that we engage, government and enterprise typically used to mean tribal government and casinos. That's kind of changed as well. A lot of the Native American organizations and their economic development efforts have tried to diversify and expand out of that casino space so they weren't so dependent on that industry. We see that a lot, but casino is still a big part of that operation. But throughout all of that life cycle and all the work that we've done in the public sector and Indian country, one thing has remained a full constant, and that is our dedication to the Microsoft platform. We are a Microsoft Gold partner in a number of specialized competencies that Microsoft certifies. Gold partner, in some cases, it might mean more to us than it does to you. But what it does signify is a commitment to certification and success with our customers. And the only way you get a gold partner certification today, it used to be different, but the only way you get it today is if Microsoft actually speaks to your customers to verify the work that you say you did was successful. That's why you'll see fewer and fewer gold partners out there as it becomes more and more of a challenge to actually back up the commitments that you make, and as well as dedicating resources and dollars to certifying your folks inside that technology. It's a big challenge. Just a smattering of different organizations that we've worked with, too many logos to put on a page, but we're proud of the work and the opportunity that these tribal organizations have given us to engage with them and their communities to help them become successful. I'm not going to go through every single one of those, but hopefully some of them look familiar. I think there's a few of you from your organizations that might even see your crest up there as well. So one of the clients that we've recently done a big modernization effort for is Mille Lacs Corporate Ventures. Very good partner of ours, very forward thinking, And they're one of the organizations that we've recently done some work with that really diversified their commercial portfolio. So in their corporate ventures, not only do they have gaming enterprise and hospitality enterprise, as you might expect, but they also have many different other types of businesses, small and large, that they've engaged in. And in doing so, it created a lot of geographic disparity in the different types of computer devices, networks, and technologies that they were looking to support. So Drew McElrath, one of their strategic resources in IT, came to us and said, I need a way to manage this where I don't have to drive out to every single location. I don't have to worry about what server's connecting where. I need like a top-down approach. So when we suggested our way of doing managed services for a tribe, which is from the cloud down, he was very interested. So this is a comment from him. He is very happy to talk about the different successes that they've had in moving to Microsoft 365 with the support services that we're going to talk to you about today. So when we look at modern security challenges, I think it's probably a good idea to understand that security is constantly a moving target. There's no such thing as 100% secure. I think most of us would like to fall asleep at night noting that our house was 100% secure, our business was 100% secure, our office, our computers were 100% secure. But the reality is it's an evolving threat landscape, and we have to constantly evolve the security in the way we go about it. You know, clearly we can't do it the same way today that we did 10 years ago, and that's what scares us the most. As an organization that focuses most of its effort inside Indian countries, a lot of folks look at IT as more strategic than they used to, but the security piece of it really eludes them as far as how they approach it. And in some cases, it's really too big for the traditional tribal IT organization to tackle by themselves. Many of the folks we work with have made investments in products and things like that. We want to talk to you about an underlying component of it that I think may provide an additional layer of, I dare say, comfort and security as you look at the landscape and managing your network. The modern workplace changed a lot last year, didn't it? Right? We used to come in an office, we used to sit down in the tribal headquarters or our enterprise and do our jobs, and all of a sudden we were forced to look at a different way of doing business. That acceleration of the modern workplace has really also put a much bigger pressure on security. You hear more and more about cybersecurity threat today than you did 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. Well, that even accelerated a little bit more last year with the change that was put on us, right? So when we start talking about how that affects us, your IT organization, and if you're in the IT organization, I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but being able to communicate with leadership and the other business owners about the type of technology challenges that they have, there's a lot of moving pieces there. We have a combination of on-premise technology. We have a combination of software as a service applications. We have this thing called shadow IT that crops up a lot for a lot of the tribal organizations, where a business unit, either in the enterprise or the government, had a business need. They found a place to buy it. They could put a credit card in and start using technology in the cloud right away. And they might have even have gotten it integrated into some business systems, and IT didn't even know about it. So trying to make sense of all this really and keep security from one point of view is very difficult. So we want to introduce a couple different ways that can help minimize what that threat landscape works like in consideration of all the different things that you might have out there in that equation. So fragmented market for security solutions. I guess it was 2 years ago now, back when you could still go to a conference, which is starting to light back up, which is good. But about 2 years ago, I went to something called the Black Hat Conference in Las Vegas. And it was my second time going. For those of you that might not know, I have a master's degree in cybersecurity, so I have a little bit of an interest in hacking and security as it stands as an industry. From 1 year to the next, going 2 years in a row, the amount of consolidation and new products in the cybersecurity space, whether it was a device you were going to plug into your network, or this organization bought these 3 companies and are now offering it as one suite of software, Well, the IT shop and every tribal organization we work with is trying to keep up with that. They're making investments in these tools, but they don't all have a common denominator approach to how they're managed, and it's become a lot. It's also come at a cost premium that's difficult to manage, and more importantly, it's started to say how much it's going to cost a year or 2 or 5 years down the road from a budget life cycle, because there's so much consolidation and new product coming out there, kind of hard to pin it down. So we think we have an opportunity to help maybe streamline a good portion of what that risk and that tool matrix might be for you. And as we've kind of touched on, you think about, well, how do I balance the security requirements of my organization while still prioritizing either service to the community and the tribal membership that I support and their families, or the business that I'm supporting, whether it's the patrons in the casino or another for-profit entity or a government contracting business that my tribe is invested in, right? So we want to talk about how to integrate security into the platform and the services and the productivity tools that you use so that there's less churn on the approach to security inside the organization. That's what we try to minimize with what we call Articare 365. And we're going to talk to you a little bit about that coming up here. Microsoft 365, if you keep up with how Microsoft names its products, is now what's referred to as formerly Office 365, but it's now bundled with several other components. You have the operating system itself of your PC. You have the Office applications that you typically use in your organization, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, things like that. It has online services like hosted email and Exchange. And if you don't use hosted email and Exchange right now, that means somebody in your IT organization loses sleep every night babysitting your email and Exchange server. And if you've been keeping up in the news, Exchange server and mail servers are a massive attack vector for cyber criminals, constantly being exploited and very difficult to maintain security for. Put it in the cloud, becomes Microsoft's fault. The risk is up there. The odds of breaching Microsoft's online mail services are pretty small. They're definitely smaller than breaching your own mail services that you have down at your local data center. And believe it or not, there's even an attempt to provide, and I'll use this term loosely in this organization, sovereignty to the data that you keep up there in the cloud. Many of the tribes that we worked with years ago had a real hurdle of understanding placing their business applications in that cloud and then losing the brick and mortar or physical location of that data from a sovereignty perspective and how the law treats that. The difference now is that it's not safer on the ground any longer, and there's no one that can make the argument that it is. If you are of the mind that you think your data is safer in your own data center than it is in a larger data center with economy of scale, this is probably not the webinar for you. I can tell you that with a lot of good confidence. We've had the sovereignty discussion from, I think, a good baseline and probably more appropriate baseline than most IT organizations as a tribally owned organization. Sovereignty in and of itself inside the cloud, believe it or not, that word in and of itself is the only time commercial business outside of the tribal space actually entertains the value of sovereignty. In other words, my data is my data in my cloud, the same way you would say your data is your data at the tribal headquarters or at the tribal data center. As an individual, I expect some degree of sovereignty for my data, right? Microsoft gives us the ability today to even take that a step further, where you can place your data in their cloud and they'll give you the encryption keys to that data. So even if it's subpoena, or even if it's requested from a foreign entity or any other government, Microsoft can say, we can't give you the data because we don't have the encryption keys to it. The customer holds the encryption keys to the data. That was not something that was afforded to tribes 5-10 years ago in the cloud, but it is an opportunity that you have today, which is an interesting paradigm to the challenge of sovereignty. So I want to make sure I made that statement for you. Advanced services like archiving your mail, keeping a record of that stuff, and more importantly, the cost of data storage and the ability to back it up and protect it from cybersecurity threats. The cloud has a scale and an economy of scale process that you cannot match in your on-premise data center. Even if you've convinced yourself that you can, it's just simply not true. So when we look at external threat protection, internal data leaks, now we might have a bad actor, or we might have what's more common as an unintentional human risk inside our organization, where they either get phished or they're asked for information by somebody they trust. You've all seen examples of this. Microsoft 365 actually has the ability to present some of that outside and inside risk by using artificial intelligence to analyze the type of message requests and the type of transactions and data that's going in and out of your organization. Just yesterday, I had one of our internal IT folks give me a call on the phone and said, "Hey, Dave, I just blocked a bunch of files from being sent into the recycling bin out of your OneDrive. Looked like there was about 800 documents that you were looking to delete. Was this you?" And I said, "Yeah, it was actually. I moved everything to Teams and I got rid of a whole bunch of stuff that I was keeping until I verified that it was there." But he called me up right away because Office 365 sent him an alert saying, "Hey, a bunch of information was just looking to be deleted. You want to confirm that this was a request?" Also, a couple of weeks ago, sent financial documents to a third-party auditor to go through something, and before they were released from Exchange, got a call from internal IT. Our CIO happened to get that ping and said, "Hey, did you just mean to send some financial information outside of the organization to so-and-so?" I said, "Yep, that was me. Thank you." Went ahead and he released that message from the queue. Now that's Microsoft's artificial intelligence looking at the context, the data loss prevention capabilities that we have enabled inside our tenant to protect us from either information being deleted, wiped out inadvertently, or on purpose, depending on the situation we face, right? And that's an added benefit that we get just from being up in that cloud. We also get device management. And we talked about the operating system where we have basically Windows as a service. You subscribe to Microsoft 365 and you get the latest and greatest patches for the Microsoft operating system that's on your PCs. It gets to be applied, monitored, reported on, and we get telemetry on where it sits across the entire enterprise. Doesn't matter where your person is, whether they're in the house, whether they're on the road, in business, at a hotel, doesn't matter where they are. And we get to monitor that from the cloud, and so do you from a console perspective inside Microsoft 365. And that's a cloud down or a cloud managed service versus the traditional managed services practice that we grew up on. So I'm going to go into a little bit more detail on that. Here's a slide on Microsoft 365 features. I'm not going to read each one of these line items. Hopefully you appreciate that. But there are some things here that I think stick out for you. For example, unlimited number of users for Office 365 Enterprise License 3. And we can talk to you more about that if you have questions. But you get a 100 gig mailbox per user as part of that without having to buy any additional storage. You have unlimited OneDrive storage per user. That's unlimited OneDrive storage. So all the files, folders, and everything that you back up today and put inside OneDrive and have in 7 different places inside your organization, that storage that's kind of hard to beat if you look at an overall cost perspective from the storage volume, the backup volume, the maintenance of that and everything. To be able to put that in a subscription is massive. And then when you look at all the other security elements that are listed here, which we can go through in a lot more detail if you have questions at another time, you can't put all this in place for your users with a single product, with a single price point on a per month basis. It's just not possible to beat the economy of scale of something to this degree. And then lastly, before we jump into the benefits of the managed service that we want to talk to you predominantly about today, I talked to you about security at scale. And there's no such thing as 100% secure. So if you leave with anything today, just know that security is a constant challenge for any IT organization. And I think many of the folks that we work with want to believe that they're able to keep up with it, but it's not without help anymore. You can't do it by yourself. We ourselves use Microsoft's data center and tools and subscription services to help bolster not only our own security for Arctic IT, but as well as for our customers. And that helps me kind of dovetail into what we want to talk to you a little bit more about today, called ArcticCare 365. So what we've done, in addition to putting best-in-class security at scale into our customers' hands and help them administer and manage that, what we've done is we look at the managed services business traditionally that's been out there today. And if you don't know what managed services are, that means you basically outsource the basic maintenance, operating system, support, upgrades, updates, and security monitoring of your critical infrastructure out to a third party so that your IT organization can focus on mission critical applications, program delivery, community support, line of business applications such as point of sale, hospitality systems, casino management systems, and not have to constantly be paved over with operating system security maintenance and issues that might hit just the brick and mortar layer of your infrastructure. So you can outsource that to what's typically been called a managed services practice. Arctic IT has created a different service level that instead of the traditional managed service where we have servers on the ground, and we're going to then put agents all over your computers and try to manage what those patchings and how that operation works. We actually use the Microsoft 365 service. We look at the number of users, the types of users that you have, and then we manage those managed services from a cloud down perspective so that you have the flexibility and security at scale, and you can focus on the other mission critical items that are inside your business application structure. So ArcticCare 365 managed services and security is what Andre is going to give us a little bit more detail about as far as how we deliver that service. So I want to just give you some high level understanding. I'm not going to read every one of those bullet points again. This is a deck that we'll provide to you guys so that you can think about this in a little bit more detail. But think about being able to pay one price per month for all your operating system updates and patching, security monitoring, all your Office 365 applications from Microsoft. So that's a Microsoft 365 SKU. And then in addition to that, we provide you unlimited 24/7 help desk support, right? We have the ability to maintain your network operating systems and help you manage what all those endpoints and interactions with your endpoints are. The productivity that you're supposed to gain out of all those Office 365 applications is something that we can support, again, 24/7. Training and testing, there's a good amount of training that's required to help keep the organization secure. Believe it or not, phish testing is a way to train your users to be more secure. And if you're not doing phish testing right now actively in the organization, there's a bad actor that's actually phish testing your people right now, I promise. So do you want to control the phish test so that you have an education opportunity and have someone that's a trusted security expert doing that as part of your service delivery? Chances are the answer is yes. And then security management. Advanced monitoring and being able to digest the different types of alerts that a security tool provides, that's an expertise that's pretty extensive. Most tribal organizations are faced with budget challenges. IT is a necessary expense, but it isn't always funded the way it needs to be. And IT typically has to make decisions on, do I want to focus on security or do I want to focus on line of business revenue or service delivery? And most of the time, security gets put in place, they check the box, and then they have to keep working on other stuff, and it's not constantly monitored. So being able to outsource that monitoring and that engagement and at least the alert maintenance of the type of stuff that those tools can provide, that's a huge benefit to the tribe. So just as a nutshell, if you will, ArcticCare 365 at a glance provides all these things for a low monthly price, and it's based on per endpoint, per user, depending on how you deploy. So as a services overview, this is a list along the left-hand side. Again, I'm not going to go through every single one of these. I kind of talked about those, but it's a combination of our service provision as well as Microsoft 365's tool to help get you to that point where you're not worried about the day-to-day operation, basically the daily driver function of all your end users, regardless of where they work and the network resources that they require. This is mission critical for any tribal organization, government or enterprise, as they look forward into the next several years. Not only did last year change the way we work overnight, but it changed the way we work as tribal organizations forever. Right? So we have to look at that and embrace that. And this is Arctic IT's way of responding to what Indian country has been asking us for. The demand for this has become quite substantial. That's one of the reasons that we decided to present this today and talk to you about what the opportunity is and engage with you and let you ask questions about this. So on that, I'm going to introduce Andre in a little bit more detail than he introduced himself. Andres has been supporting a number of our customers for years in and out of their managed services life cycle and their relationship with technology as their businesses have grown, and in some cases as their businesses have shrunk. If you think about some of our Alaskan businesses, last year, tourism and oil, not a good year for those businesses in Alaska. This year, tourism's coming back up. Oil is actually starting to, believe it or not, pink back up, as they say. And the ability to evolve and ebb and flow with those businesses at the same time that technology and security risk is changing is a really deep skill. So Andre comes to our team with a number of years of experience and comes to our customers with that experience as well. So I'm going to let him talk to you about how our ArcticCare 365 services break down individually along all these lines. So go ahead, Andre.
Thanks so much, Dave. Yeah, this is where, the rubber meets the road. I wanted to discuss a little bit more about what our service is, what it is that makes us stand out from the crowd. I want to make sure that everyone's walking away from this hour understanding, the value of that Microsoft layer that we've got in there, because what it is that our people bring is really what makes our service phenomenal. Microsoft 365 is certainly just the beginning, but those Microsoft 365 tools are procured and managed through our partnership, and they'll allow us to robustly manage our client networks, computers, and servers. When we begin our relationship, we take stock of what's incoming through what we call an ArcticCare health assessment. We make necessary recommendations for critical improvements, and then we build a roadmap in conjunction with you, whoever your point of contact may be with us, and modernize your components, that are less urgent as a roadmap item. Once our hooks are in, that 24/7/365 monitoring is mostly automated, and our tools don't sleep. Therefore, we are alerted when critical systems are failing or failed, just like the examples that Dave was able to point out. Updates and patches are going to be reviewed by our team and pushed out via scripting, and that keeps our clients' computers updated and safe. The lion's share of viruses and similar bad code that are discovered in situations where a company is victimized by a cyber attack, they're known values, they're known viruses that have been around for a while. You got to make sure that everything's patched up, and that's part of our service. Keeping those computers up to date, patches, updates, virus definitions, it's a good network hygiene, and should be considered the first line of defense outside of the human firewall, which I'll talk about in a second. There are many other things that need to be managed that are part of your network, and our ArcticCare Network Operations Center, in conjunction with our account managers, they're tasked with organizing those thoughts and needs into action items. As an aside, in our industry, we abbreviate that term Network Operations Center into NOC. So if you haven't heard that term before, that's the NOC. And in the next slide, I'm talking about speaking of them. And you got to have somebody who you're going to call. And our teams are second to none. We've got a highly trained staff with various elevation levels to expediently take care of issues, small to large. Could be as simple as, I need to change my password and the day-to-day stuff. It could be much more complex. We've seen it all. So we've got a team here at the ready. I'm based out of Anchorage, like Dave was introducing me. We've got a call center here. We've also got one in Plano, Texas, and we've only got growth in sight. We're continuing to expand. You can call us, you can email us, you can chat with us once we're in a contract together, and your requests come in so we can manage them from soup to nuts in an unlimited fashion within the business hours that we designate as covered under that ArcticCare agreement. We do have staff on call 24/7 for those late at night emergencies, so like we mentioned before, we want to make sure that we're there to worry about the things that you don't have to. I also want to talk about training. We always tell our clients the best service that we can offer to increase the productivity and security of staff is education. I was talking about that human firewall. Training is paramount to our Articure 365 offering. At the beginning of each month, we send out a menu of all the pre-scheduled trainings that take place with a live instructor. Anyone in your staff can take advantage of those. The instructors cover a broad range of Office 365 applications, such as Outlook, Word, Excel, the main ones, as well as some of those productivity ones. And they add a value to those tools that have become ubiquitous, and maybe you're underutilizing some of the other products in terms of Microsoft 365's offerings. For those of you that already have that in play, maybe you're not using all the different parts and pieces. There's all kinds of new technology and functionality that's added all the time.
Yeah, and the word training gets a different spin on this next slide, right, Andre? So training your team members and your employees to become more aware. So tell us a little bit about security awareness testing.
That's right. I've already, kind of pointed that we want to make sure your staff is sharp, and we know all too well that even the best of us can be caught in the crosshairs of a phishing email. So additionally, we've got a joke amongst our peers that every organization has a clicker, huh, Dave? A person who's going to click on stuff that they shouldn't, no matter what you do. But to that end, once a quarter, we are sending out a phishing email. Our point of contact can choose to know when it's coming or just allow to let them fly to be a part of the test as well. Our tools tell us when somebody's looked at an email or if they've performed any of the bad actions and followed a link or opened attachment, depending on what we send out. And they can see if we can actually see if they've entered any personally identifiable information in the snare or that kind of stuff. This is eventually going to lead them to a screen telling them that we've done, they've done something wrong, and a short informational video about what to do. We can report on those things and make sure that the short training is actually done. That way your staff is continuously learning. And we share that point with the point of contact that we have during our conversations with them. As we have a high touch conversation with our clients.
Yeah, we don't make any kind of, web meeting shaming event to say, ooh, you clicked on something, right? It's done professionally and it's done under the premise of training.
I wanted to say that as well. This is all in the interest of learning, and so our professional staff know how to handle that delicately and effectively.
I find it difficult once I find out who actually clicked on it, not to give them a little bit of ribbing. It's a challenge for me. But at the same time, it really is a training opportunity. We make light of it sometimes, but this is one of the biggest values that we can provide to the organization because it's typically one that they don't make time for. So if you think about it, if you're not training your team to be more aware of the threats that are out there and you're not getting creative with how you go about it, they're not thinking about it. So we actually use a tool that monthly provides an education opportunity for cybersecurity that we make everybody go through. It takes 4 to 5 minutes a month. They go through it, they go through the exercise, answer a couple questions, and then it lets us know that at least once a month we touch them with some security awareness and training. And then additionally, without any known schedule, we'll send out that phishing, what we call a simulated phishing attack. And we see who bites and what the mechanics of actually responding to it were. Who calls who reacts, who sees it, who doesn't, who clicks, right? So it's a very good exercise.
Yeah, that monthly one that Dave is referring to, that's something that we do at Arctic IT. I just want to make sure that we don't think that that's part of ArcticCare, but we do recommend that, and got plenty of information for that. One of the many things that we offer is conversations, so that we're constantly having conversations with our clients about what it is that is most important to their organization and how we can best meet those needs. If your staff, has to be sharp, we have to be sharper, to speak to this slide. The industry-leading tools we employ generate a lot of information for us to make actionable events from, so we can make sure to keep you safe. We realize that not everybody's going to have an IT person on staff that speaks, the IT lingo, and you just might need the highlights. Your dedicated account manager can bring what's important to the table with monthly digests and quarterly sit-down that allow us to strategize and protect your interests. Might have to be more frequent than that at the onset, if there's a lot of changes that are going to be taking place, but we want to make sure we're having a high touch relationship. We bring critical risk factors to bear constantly, but understand that some things have to be budgeted for, so we make those strategic conversations available. And we help you manage your network device life cycles, so your aging infrastructure doesn't compromise your security or continuity. So that's how we address cybersecurity engagements. We want to talk about advanced monitoring as well. The industry-leading tools we apply on your systems are an effective shield against the most common exploitation of businesses today. As I mentioned at the top, we're constantly reviewing what that industry best is and aligning ourselves to exceed expectations. As it stands, the cloud-first strategy of leveraging Microsoft 365's product licensing allows us to make intelligent parameters for the monitoring we layer in. Right at the onset of our relationship, we have a sit down with you to request or to really just help you design your company's security stance so that we can be of guidance to anything that should be discussed. We're versed in the Microsoft Security and Compliance Center. As Dave shared, we're a Microsoft Gold partner, so we've got folks trained up and down on how to periodically review that, make sure that it's well aligned with what you need even after initial configuration. There are alerts set up to alarm us if unwanted activities are taking place on the network, and we can shut most of the harmful exploits down before they cause any real disruption. So we know that security is a moving target. We realize that there's nothing that's going to be 100% secure, but we know that we've designed our tools to alert us and have us looking at all those critical items very frequently. And although we talk about the power of the Microsoft cloud, we also understand its limitations and to a larger extent, human error. And so to that effect, we found that offering ArcticCare data defense will layer in additional protections and useful safeguards. This included service of cloud-to-cloud backups. Take a copy of your most mission-critical data from your Microsoft tenant, such as your emails and saved documents on your different drives that you've got there for replication that lasts for years. This has really saved people's bacon, so we want to make sure that that's something that we keep at the forefront, keeping those backups. Additionally, we can talk about what's appropriate in terms of backups for what you might still be keeping in house. There's folks that have to have a server. We can set it up so that that data is replicated not only on site but also in the cloud. So you've got continuity and you've got peace of mind.
Yeah, it's a good point, Andre. I think it's mission critical for us to address some of the tribes we work with. I think there's somebody from Navajo on the session today. I've spent an appreciable amount of time down there, and sometimes the network is not what it needs to be at the service center we need to have. So we're going to have local server resources, and they might be connected to the internet, but the connectivity might be shoddy. It might not be consistent. So we have many different ways today to still leverage the power of the cloud, but provide on-premise resources. You'll hear this term that's out there more and more called edge computing. Well, the people that sell hardware and software and subscription services, you might remember back in the day there was something called a dumb terminal. Well, nobody wants to call a computer dumb anymore, so we're going to call it a thin client. And then nobody wanted to call something thin or a fat client, so now we started to call it a smart client, right? Well, when we take all the servers and we move them up to the cloud, and then we realize, well, we have business processes, whether it's in our medical clinic, a manufacturing operation, a services center that's not too connected to the community center, or a business that we have that's out in the middle of nowhere that has spotty internet connectivity. They still need technology at their fingertips. So what we're able to do today is use edge computing, place devices there that actually have subscription services to the cloud and use off hours to synchronize the data so that when it's connected, it has all the information it needs, patches, updates, and backup capability. And when it's not connected, it still allows the business to operate. Again, healthcare and manufacturing make use of edge computing quite frequently. What Andre's talking about with data defense is for those devices there, we can actually place a backup service that has a cloud connection. It connects, it doesn't occupy the resources of the server at the time, and it lets you operate with more security and fault tolerance than you typically would. The other point, just to put one more stress on this, is that You put all your eggs in the Microsoft basket. What we're telling you as security professionals and application technology professionals is that having one backup is not necessarily enough. Now, if you know how Microsoft technology works, when we put stuff in OneDrive or SharePoint and Teams, we have things called recycle bins. You have a recycle bin on your desktop, you have a recycle bin on your computer. One of the cool things is when you move to the cloud, there's actually 3, potentially 4 recycle bins with 30 days. One you have access to pull something from, the other several you need IT's help or service professionals' help to help get access to. But there's other things like emails and archive and documents that once something gets deleted, it's actually gone. Microsoft isn't actually backing up your email content or your SharePoint content or OneDrive content. They're using a retention life cycle to make sure it's available when you need it based on the policies you select. But if someone deletes something and it's deleted for 90 days and those recycling bins have emptied out, it is officially gone. So what we offer as a built-in component of our managed services offering called Articure 365 is what we call a cloud-to-cloud backup. So we have a service that runs that will back up everything inside Office 365 from Outlook, Teams, SharePoint, and OneDrive for your user. It encrypts it, puts it in a third-party storage container. It can only be accessed with your encryption keys to pull it back out of backup. That way, if Microsoft ever loses something, which I don't have a record of, but if your end user deleted something and they need it back and it's already been washed out of that retention life cycle, you get this built-in backup cloud-to-cloud service. So in other words, all of your eggs are not in one basket, and you have an additional layer of security if anything's ever compromised on top of that. And it's that layers of security that we are big proponents of. And I think one other point, Andre, too, and I know you look at it this way as well, we consider Articare 365 in our organization as an additional layer of security that you would want to have in place inside your tribal business.
Absolutely. And yeah, that's what I was kind of alluding to with the saving of bacon. It's definitely one of those things where there's a human component to it. If things are irreparably lost, we need to have a different way to get back and reach back there.
Anytime you can work bacon into the conversation, I'm a fan.
It's morning time in Alaska. You know, you were alluding to all the different types of organizations that fall under the umbrella of the tribes we look to work with. And we know that many in our audience are working on federal contracts, you know, may run local governments, have health clinics to deal with, just for examples. And, you know, there are regulatory bodies that they have to answer to and mandates they have to follow. So we've got experience with many of these, are prepared to support any inquiry or alignment that needs to be made. Microsoft 365 checks a lot of those boxes for us and allows us to, you know, meet or exceed a lot of those regulatory requirements.
I'm glad you brought that up, Andre, too, because when you think about, you know, whether it's a medical clinic, tribal facility, or we get into the enterprise side for payment card industry, PCI compliance, outside of those processing capabilities and some of the third-party software that has to include some of those compliance items, the applications that you use in your business, desktop operating system, all of that stuff, you have to check a lot of the audit boxes to even be able to get those compliance certificates. And one of the other ones that's really started to creep up lately, and we're actually talking about this at the Reservation Economic Summit next week in Las Vegas, which we're excited to be at. We're talking about something called CMMC, which references the cyber security maturity model that the federal government is looking for. Originally, it was going to be just DoD level resources, but now it's all government contractors. So if your tribal enterprise has diversified into government contracting, they're going to have a new compliance standard based on that CMMC requirement, just as another one to add to the list. And one of the key points that you touch on is that if you move a good portion of this infrastructure and maintenance and really that operating system maintenance into Microsoft's cloud, you inherit the controls that you're supposed to demonstrate for these audit standards without having to build them in or manage or add third-party software and technology into your own on-premise stack. You actually inherit those controls. Microsoft has it documented, and you're able to submit. We have all of our eggs from our end users and our desktop management subscribed into a Microsoft 365 tenant, and we have a managed services provider that's able to manage that security for us. That already puts you, believe it or not, at a CMMC level 2. You can jump to level 3 depending on how much of those services you subscribe to, and it's all inherited controls. That gets a little into the security weeds for our time today, so I'll stop. But I'll let you go into the next one about Microsoft 365 license management.
That's right. I want to make sure that everyone understands, because we've been talking so much about Microsoft licensing, and I know that at least some of you have tried your hand at educating yourself and looking at what all these great options are with the Microsoft 365 cloud. But for those of you that have, I'm sure you can attest to how daunting it can initially be, at least. In Microsoft's attempt to cover all of the bases, there are a laundry list of options to choose from, and we pride ourselves on having invested in this space and have a staff that know this stuff like the back of their hand. The back of their hand might have very small writing on it, but at the end of the day, we're here to make sure that you're not overspending on tools you don't use and can offer add-ins that will make you more productive.
Yeah, and part of that, Andre, as you mentioned, is license provisioning and what to buy and how to get the best value of it. We're a Microsoft partner, but our money, just to be completely frank here, or Dave, is made on the services side of things and helping people take advantage of the technology to be strategic for them. But a lot of times the question on licensing is really hard for people to nail down. And as Andre said, there's a lot of options. So we pride ourselves on being able to get the best value for you on your licensing based on what you tell us. And really, just so that you have more money to spend on services with your other IT providers or maybe even us, right? So we're motivated to help you save money on licensing. Let us talk to you about that, how we might be able to manage that subscription process for you. If you have questions on it, let us be that resource as part of our service. And that's one of the best values we can provide, just as an add-on to the cybersecurity and the desktop infrastructure maintenance we do as well.
Yeah, we'll work with you to make those choices without making it complicated, and keep track of what cycles may need to be paid, and simply do that as a pass-through. Like Dave is mentioning, it's really just making sure what's right is what you're getting billed for, and we can make it so that we're billing you directly for it as a pass-through, so that you're not seeing a whole bunch of bills from different people. We want to be the one place that you turn to for technology, and we want to keep you running successfully, and that's really what we have designed ArcticCare 365 around, to make sure that we're leveraging all those tools efficiently.
Yeah, and Joanne, who's on the call with us, and Flora up in our Anchorage office, they help manage a lot of the licensing and renewals. Their favorite thing to do is help customers through licensing renewals. That might not be true, but it is something that we do help with. It is something that's a constant thing, right? Last year, people had a whole big licensing change because everybody started working differently. And all of a sudden, the licensing model that they had evolved into didn't work anymore. So that continues to be a big challenge for organizations. So hopefully, you know that you have a resource in Arctic IT to help you out. And with that, Andre, I think we are at the questions part here. So on time.
I know there's lots to digest, but I gotta tell you that we're really excited about all the different services and this Microsoft 365 platform that we're bringing to the table. To those of you that want to learn more, I can assure you that we sound a lot more expensive than we are. We know where we need to be to enable business without impeding overall success. Better than that, our method gives you the peace of mind that you have a team of professionals that take these topics seriously and can apply common sense approach to protecting your interests. I'm going to be at Res as well. So next week, I'm looking forward to meeting those of you that are going to be in attendance. Come look for our Arctic IT booth. We've got all kinds of fun things in store, along with great information that we can share. So if you want to close out with some comments, Dave, we can type in any questions that you might have into the chat. I think Joanne is keeping a monitor of that. So if we've got any questions, she'll start reading them off after Dave closes us out, I'm thinking.
And we have some flyers. There's PDFs that are available in the meeting console that you can pull down. If you have any challenges with that, you can reach out to Andre directly or myself. There's an email that we'll provide right at the end here called connect@ArcticIT, and we'll make sure that your requests are responded to. Okay, so any questions from the audience?
We will give it a few minutes. There's one, how does this work with tribes that have their own IT staff?
Yeah, that's one I would expect. So what we've noticed over the years as the technology adoption of tribes has really started to expand, which from our perspective is great to see. I believe that technology is a real catalyst for everything from community to family to culture anymore. As the tribal population gets younger and expands, it is a necessary component of how we do business. The challenge is that IT folks and qualified IT folks inside the security and really the maintenance space are hard to come by. Many of the tribes we work with are not around geographic city centers where they can pull a lot of qualified help from. And then they also have budget challenges where even if they are close to a metropolitan center or nearby and they can draw talent from, the money that they need to pay those folks is also a challenge. And one of the cool things that I find most rewarding about being able to provide these kind of services into tribes is that it really is an educational opportunity for the IT staff that are there. We're not actually looking to displace IT staff, but when your IT department is having trouble hiring and keeping on top of all these security challenges with the day-to-day maintenance and operation of the brick and mortar infrastructure that they need, they're constantly having to make decisions on, do I focus on security or focus on business application that the tribal program or department that's having a problem requires? So
or day-to-day activities.
Go ahead.
Or day-to-day activities. I mean,
yeah.
That's what I've always told people is that we work best with, you know, somebody who has an internal staff specifically because we're allowing those internal resources to focus in on some of the higher aspects of IT, some of those larger decisions that need to be made, and we can work in conjunction with them. The day-to-day, I got to change a password and all that minutia can be taken away, and allowing them to focus in really on what is more important to bring more security and maybe even have innovative ideas about how to use technology.
Even bridging the gap of using a cloud down operations and maintenance perspective versus the traditional on-premise tools that even large and small tribes use. Believe it or not, this is not a size differential. We work with tribes of all different sizes. Very, very large, some of the largest in the United States, and some of the smallest. Either way, they all have to have some IT individual or team inside the organization. This is not just shifting workload. And I don't want you to look at this as saying, hey, I have an IT department already that many times are tribal employees, which is great to see. This is actually taking something that they're having a challenge managing today, whether you know it or not, and at the same time offloading it to a third-party service, believe it or not, as Andre said, more cost effectively than you can do it internally, and we stand by that. It also helps you move the risk. And it also helps you shrink your attack surface from cyber risk. So it's not so much the service offering and allowing your current IT staff to be able to focus on more strategic mission-driven stuff. It's also helping you offload risk and drastically improve your security posture at the same time, which is something your existing IT staff can't do. So that's one of the big differences. We do expect that you have IT staff. We do expect to support them. This does not displace them at all. This helps them focus on the stuff that they're more interested in, strategically valuable for, by offloading the day-to-day operation stuff to somebody like us. Hopefully that answered the question, Joanne.
I believe it did. Thank you. We'll give it another sec to see if we have any other questions that come in.
Oh, I just got another one right here, Joanne. Someone asked me, you mentioned that it's priced either by user or device. What's the difference? Good question. Well, we work with some organizations where they don't actually have one user and one computer matched up to each other. Very common in the tribal organizations. It's also much more common in the casino space where we have what we call frontline workers. I might have a workstation out on a hotel desk where 18 different people use in an hour. So I'm not going to necessarily license a device 18 times, but I have 18 users that might have their own profile or their own security requirements, their own OneDrive. Who knows how they manage that information? Sometimes we refer to it as a kiosk user. Microsoft even has licensing available for that type of stuff called F1 or a frontline worker, if you will. But that desktop scenario, or even a mobile device scenario, maybe I have a program on the tribal government where there's a laptop or a tablet that's going to go out in the field. Maybe it's a site survey, maybe it's an inspection of a house in one of the housing programs that we work with. Well, that same device might be used by 6 or 7 different folks. So we have the ability to license just the device and a user, or just the user and the computer together. So we help you split that up so it's more cost effective. Most importantly is to protect both, so that there's not a scenario where one's protected and one's not. This also allows us to take care of non-Microsoft devices at the same time. Some of the folks we work with will use things like iPads to deliver services in the field, or they'll use iPads or Surfaces, which is a Microsoft device and an operating system, but out on the casino floor to engage with guests. Those scenarios require a different licensing scheme that's not traditional to the traditional Microsoft, or I should say managed services platform. So Articare 365 allows us to address both. Another question?
Great. I don't believe there are any other questions.
Oh, I got one more here, Joanne. It says, what happens if there's a security breach for someone that has your service? Well, that's another great question. Everybody needs to have what's called an incident response plan. An incident response plan. If that's not something that your organization has, that's something we can help you develop. It's not necessarily part of our service offering. It's kind of a one-off that we help organizations with. The reason is that an incident response plan is very specific and unique to the organization, its size, the people. It actually names who gets called when and for what circumstance. If there is a breach and we're the ones that detect it, or we're notified, or there's a security incident, one of the most important things about a service like we provide is having that incident response plan that we actually are part of, so that you might, or our team might, help you determine what level of threat it is, what type of incident. Is it, a different threat level from basic, or maybe a misinterpretation of an email, or no, someone's actually inside my computer doing something, right? Different severity levels of incidents of what a plan is. Believe it or not, I happen to have right here, this is the Arctic IT Incident Response Plan. As an executive in my company, I have that readily available right here on the top of my bookshelf at any time. Not only because that's my job in my role at Arctic IT to be able to help respond to this, but we also are an IT shop that provides security services to other IT shops. And believe it or not, one of the most important things that they're doing on any given day is being able to respond to an incident. A lot of IT shops aren't even prepared to do that. So as an IT services provider and as a cloud managed service and security provider, we are part of that incident response team in the fact that we are your managed services provider. We can tell you what's going on, but you actually have to provide direction as the customer of what your plan is. For example, step 1 might be call your legal counsel and let your legal counsel define what the next steps are. Why?
Or your
Because that automatically
cybersecurity
makes it privileged at that point. So we have different ways to engage with you. And if you find an incident that needs to be cleaned up and you want us to mitigate it, mitigation services are something that we do provide, but it's outside the scope of ArcticCare 365 because there's no way we could flat price that because one, it hasn't happened yet, and we have no idea how big it's going to be or how small it's going to be to right size the price of mitigation, and you don't know that either. Mitigation of cybersecurity incidents can be very, very expensive, and many times it also includes insurance claims and things like that. So the best answer to your question is, what does your incident response plan say you're supposed to do? And if it includes Arctic IT or your third-party provider as part of that plan, well, we jump in exactly where you need us to.
And just to add one last comment to that, it's one of the conversations that we have right at the onset. Once we take you folks on as a client, we have a meeting with you regarding what your security posture is and make recommendations as to what you can add to that cybersecurity plan would be. With that, I think we're right past the hour actually.
Just a bit.
So connect@arcticit.com is where you can reach out to us. Again, I'll be at Res, and I'm looking forward to engaging with some of you folks. Send us your information, and I would be glad to have conversations with any and all of you.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Have a great
Thanks
afternoon.
Thank you very much. Take care.
Bye-bye.